Two from Galilee. A love story by Marjorie Holmes.
We continue reading in the middle of Chapter 10 in an edited version of the book Two from Galilee, published by Fleming H. Revell Company, written by Marjorie Holmes. We are in the middle of Mary saying goodbye to her family. She's getting ready to go off to visit her Aunt Elizabeth, and she hasn't spoken with Joseph for a number of days since Joseph found out the news about her being pregnant and her family deciding to send her away. We now pick up at the point in Chapter 10 when suddenly Joseph appears out of nowhere as Mary's father is saying goodbye to her. On this episode of Two from Galilee. The day was hot and bright, and the rich, sweet fragrance of flowering ginger, almond, and lemon blossoms were in the air. For Mary, every step was torment. She could hardly bear to think of her mother, or Joseph. He had not returned to her since that night in the olive grove, and it was his father who had made these arrangements. Perhaps then his people, even his people, were anxious to be rid of her. Thus, when she saw Joseph waiting for them in the shade of the cypresses, she could not believe it. Such joy mingled with such anguish she could not speak, but only turn her wet eyes away. Joachim, too, was startled. How dared he come, complicating things? He wanted to have these final moments alone with his daughter, perhaps to hear again her story, to restore and confirm that first blessed hour when he had rocked to his soul by his words, when awed, stunned, but unquestioning, he believed her. Perhaps, fortunately, there was time for only the briefest of greetings. "They're coming! They're coming!" Esau announced, though it was a moment before the rest of them could see the film of dust that began to hover over the burning hill. He had heard the creak of harnesses and plod of hooves, and he hopped excitedly on his crooked legs, predicting accurately. "There are horses among them with the donkeys. I can tell, I can tell. When they arrive, will you lift me on the back of a horse, Father, so I can know how it feels?" We'll see, Joachim told him. Frozen in a kind of dumb fascination, they stood, watching the figures in the distance grow larger, until Joachim stepped into the road to wave them down. Then, only then, did Joseph turn to Mary. "Don't go," he said grimly, without warning. "Mary, I can't bear it. Don't go, even now. Stay here with me." "I can't," she gasped. "I must go. I've already caused our parents enough grief." Her heart was hammering. The company of strangers was drawing nearer. She could hear their voices and the fated rattle of stones beneath the hooves of the beasts they led or rode. She'd never seen any of them before. Alien faces, dusky, laughing, or grave. A mass of indifferent unknown faces behind the veils or under the soft round hats. She was frightened. She'd never been away from her mother, and she wanted desperately to go home. "But I must go," she cried, and forced herself to hasten forward, to clutch at her father's sleeves. He was conferring with a tall, swarthy man in a striped garment who was leading a horse, as Esau predicted. He was delivering it to its owner in Jericho, he explained. He seemed proud of having it in charge, but was afraid of mounting it, and advised against Esau's trying. They listened nervously to his friendly tale, diverted but preoccupied. The man told Joachim they'd be glad to have Mary accompany them. They had decided to avoid the Samarian towns that lay along the highway. They felt it would be safer to take the longer, more rigorous Jordan mountain ride, and if that was acceptable, she was welcome. He waved aside Joachim's offer of money. Thus her fate was settled. She kissed Esau, who now began to cry and cling to her, and the rough, grizzled face of her father. He would have lifted her onto the donkey, but Joseph reached for her first. Between them, she almost fell. Then she was on its back, and Joseph's face was tormentingly near, moving along beside her. "Don't stay long, Mary," he pleaded. "We've got so much to talk about. There's so much I must know." But the others were crowding in upon them, the animals and the people who wanted to continue on their way. "Oh, Mary, Mary!" The donkey rocked and jarred along beneath her. She turned for one last, forlorn, near-panicky look at the three who stood shielding their eyes. They lifted their hands stiffly to wave at her, and she made a little wistful gesture of waving back before grabbing the reins once more. Thus, she left behind her all that she loved in Galilee. Toward evening of the fourth day, tired as they all were, a tense excitement gripped everyone. They were nearing their destination. Some of the families had already dropped off at small mountain towns. Others were proceeding on to Jerusalem. Mary's anticipation was surpassed by her anxiety. Only twice before with her parents had she been in the teeming city of Jerusalem. Already exhausted, half sick from the journey, now she was sick with dread lest she fail to find her way to Ein Karim. But Hagar put her mind at ease. She and her husband would not think of abandoning her. They would ride on with her to make sure she found the home of her Aunt Elizabeth. Elizabeth had been restless all night. The child was now so big within her she found it difficult to adjust to its crowding weight on the couch. She flung off the coverlet and walked about to ease herself, her bare feet noiseless on the marble floors or the soft Persian carpets of her house. She could not leave off touching it, this precious bulge that she carried, for to do so eased a constant concern. It was there, daily growing heavier, and so surely it lived, this belated gift from God, yet thus far she had not felt it move. Was it in the 4th month or the 5th that women said that the thing began to stir? She was nearly 6 months now, 6 proud, anxious, enthralled months since her husband had come home from the temple, white and shaken, struck dumb by some experience too awesome to reveal, and that night when she had lain down with him to comfort him, he'd come into her with a power and strength amazing to a man of his years. And when she arose from his side, she had wept for the joy that had been so long denied them. Her seed had been quickened at last. She knew it at once, and for days she too had been almost too overcome with thanksgiving to speak. What if it were true? What if she were actually too old? What if Zachariah's muteness was not from wonder, but from fear for the greater disappointment that awaited them? God's miracle would prove only a mockery if she delivered a stillborn child. A sense of anticipation began to mount in Elizabeth, a strong conviction of some important thing impending. She could hear the crickets singing, the beat of the nighthawk's wings, and quite clearly, far below, the rhythmic pluck and plod of hooves as some late traveler persevered along the winding road. She had settled down on the couch once more and was half asleep, dreaming, when she heard the insistent pounding on the thick oak door. Alarm tightened her skin. Twice robbers had crept up the steep stone steps and forced their way boldly into the home of the pious unarmed priest. But it wasn't of her remaining silver she was thinking, only the safety of her child. Then the voice came to her, the sweet young voice that sounded so familiar and yet so startling. "Aunt Elizabeth, don't be afraid. It's Mary, your sister's daughter. It's only me." "Mary?" Fumbling for robes, Elizabeth caught up the night lamp. "How can this be?" She hurried to the door and flung it wide. In the added glow of a sputtering torch, 2 figures were revealed. "Forgive us for disturbing you so late," Mary said. "We took the wrong fork in the road." She turned to the heavy, dark man in the striped robe. "Thank you, Seth. I'll never forget your kindness in coming with me." Yes, Elizabeth said. "Bless you for bringing her safely to me. But why? How? No time for explanations. You have to come in first. Get refreshed." The 2 women gazed at each other in wonder a second after they had embraced. "Is it really you, little Mary?" Elizabeth asked. She lifted her lamp to the young face, so sunburned and dusty from the road. "Yes, though I can hardly believe I'm here. Never has a journey seemed so long. Never has the distance from Nazareth seemed so great." Her voice broke. And I'm not little Mary anymore, my aunt. I am a woman, grown." "It becomes you," her aunt said. "You're even more beautiful as a woman than I would have believed." "But I had to come," said Mary. "My parents wanted it, and though I dreaded leaving them, I realize now that I wanted it even more. I had to come, seeing how it is with my aunt, that God has finally favored her with seed, that it's likewise fated to be holy seed. I realize now that my aunt, and only my aunt, will understand." "Mary." Elizabeth's face was contorted with a joy that was akin to pain. "Oh, Mary." and again her hands flew on her bulging body, but this time to know and savor the sweet throbbing. "It moves. My baby, my little one, moves. Zechariah!" She turned to the slight figure that had appeared blinking in the arched doorway, bearing another lamp. "Oh, my husband, our baby lives and breathes and twists its little body within me. Our baby moves." She was crying. The tears ran unchecked down her cheeks. They mingled with the kisses that fell on Mary's face and her hair and her hands. "Blessed are you among women," she cried, "and blessed is the fruit of your womb." Still weeping, she knelt and kissed the girl's grubby feet. "Then you know," Mary said. "You already know how it is with me, my aunt?" "I know. I knew it the instant my own child leapt. How is it that I deserve to be visited by the mother of my Lord?" His mother, the mother of their Lord. Mary stood shaken and dazed. It was true, then. Her aunt bore witness. This, then, was the reason for the long, arduous journey, this confirmation. But she was so tired, rocking back and forth on the small beast, making her way forever to this place of light high on the mountainside, this pure and quiet place of peace and confirmation and holy refuge. And the voice of her gratefulness rose up in her. It poured forth from her in joy and wonder. "My soul doth magnify the Lord. My heart rejoiceth, for in him is my Savior," she cried. "He hath seen the lowliness of his handmaid, and behold, from this day all generations shall call me blessed, for the Mighty One hath done great things in me." And as her song of bliss and prophecy continued, Elizabeth could not leave off kissing her dusty feet and washing them with her tears. And Zechariah, Elizabeth's husband, wept too, in exultation for this thing that had finally come to pass. Chapter 11. Now in new ways she heard the voice of God. It roused her at dawn, when his 7 silver trumpets at the temple heralded the day's first sacrifice, and every few hours the hills were pierced again by these wild and holy signals for songs and psalms. Each time Mary trembled. It was as if the thrill of this presence rang through her, rousing her from her dreamy meditations that were a strange blend of homesickness, bliss, and awe. Jerusalem, city of David, city of God, for had he not fashioned it, and had he not named it? Was it not toward Jerusalem that one turned to pray, however far away he lived? "It's so beautiful here," Mary said, moved and lost. "Everything is. No wonder you're so beautiful, Aunt Elizabeth." Her aunt laughed. Oh, but I'm not. And Jerusalem, you'll find much there that's anything but beautiful, Mary. But right now, with the miracle that's befallen you, everything must seem incredibly beautiful to you." Suddenly, Mary told her the news. "I'm betrothed, Aunt Elizabeth, to a man named Joseph, a carpenter. We're to be married when I return home," she said. Elizabeth looked at her. "Oh, Mary, are you sure of this? Are you sure?" And there we end today's reading from Two from Galilee in the beginning of Chapter 11. We'll find out more of Elizabeth's reaction next time as we listen to Marjorie Holmes' book, Two from Galilee.